In the world's most silent places, forgotten gods still whisper beneath the ice. Arctic paganism wasn't just a belief system. It was survival wrapped in mystery. A landscape of endless cold, darkness, and silence shaped a pantheon unlike any other. These were not gods of light or law. They were beings of frost, bone, and breath. Entities feared, fed, and, in time, erased. In this video, we uncover beliefs that once ruled the top of the world, and the gods the rest of humanity was never meant to remember. If ancient myths, lost religions, and frozen mysteries captivate you, subscribe now. Before missionaries ever sailed north, before maps even named the ice, people lived in the Arctic and believed. But their gods were not written in books. They were etched in snow, echoed in animal cries, and whispered through storm winds. Unlike Europe, where paganism was absorbed or eradicated by Christianity, the Arctic remained unbaptized for centuries. The environment itself, vast, lethal, and unspeakably silent, made conquest difficult. So did the beliefs. Among the Inuit, Sami, Chukchi, and Yukagir peoples, spirituality wasn't separate from life. It was survival. There was no distinction between the sacred and the natural. Every hunt, every storm, every illness was connected to unseen forces. Some of these gods, or spirits, were helpful. Others were volatile. Most were feared. They lived in the sky, beneath the ice, within the animals. Some had names. Others, it was safer not to say. Christian missionaries eventually arrived, but what they found wasn't religion with temples. It was something older, wilder, and far harder to destroy. The Arctic wasn't beyond reach, but its faith, frozen, quiet, and invisible, proved more enduring than they expected. In Arctic paganism, gods were not golden figures on altars. They had no thrones, no crowns, and often no names. They were wind, bone, antler, ice. They were not worshipped with hymns, but with caution, offerings, and silence. The spirits of the north didn't need temples. They were everywhere. A blizzard could be an angry breath. A successful hunt was a sign of favor. A cracked ice shelf might signal a broken pact. Many gods and spirits took on hybrid forms, part animal, part human, part mist. The sea goddess Sedna, known to the Inuit, ruled the underwater world with severed fingers that became sea creatures. In some versions, she was betrayed by her own father, and now drags the souls of the drowned into her realm. There were sky spirits, storm spirits, tricksters hiding in the shape of wolves, and beings so old their names are forgotten or forbidden to speak. To see the divine was not a blessing. It was a warning, a shift in the wind, a strange shape in the fog, a dream that left ice in your bones. These entities weren't good or evil. They were powerful. And in the Arctic, power meant survival or death. When night never ends and silence swallows sound, ritual becomes survival. Arctic shamanic practices were not about spectacle. They were about contact, real, urgent, and often terrifying contact. The shaman, called Ngakik among the Inuit, was not a priest, but an intermediary, a traveler between realms. They carried no books, only memory. No relics, only bone, drum, and trance. Rituals were performed in snow huts or caves, sometimes alone, sometimes in hushed circles. The drumbeat echoed like a heartbeat through the ice. Smoke from seal oil lamps cast shadows that danced like spirits on the walls. Through trance, the shaman entered other worlds, seeking game, healing illness, or retrieving lost souls. Their visions included encounters with animal guides, ancestral voices, and terrifying gods cloaked in storm and flame. The aurora itself was sacred. Some saw it as the spirits of the dead dancing, others as a divine warning. Whistling at it was forbidden, mocking it dangerous. Sacrifice, too, was central. Bones returned to the sea. Offerings left at frozen thresholds, not for gratitude, but to avoid offense. In the Arctic, rituals weren't about salvation. They were negotiations, with powers too old to name and too close to ignore. In many Arctic traditions, naming a spirit was not a form of power. It was an invitation, and not always a safe one. Unlike pantheons where deities had fixed identities, Arctic gods and spirits often shifted shape, mood, and meaning. Some were known by titles or descriptions: the one who walked behind the wind, the spirit beneath the ice. But their true names were hidden, protected, or deliberately forgotten. Naming them might draw their attention. And in the Arctic, divine attention wasn't always a blessing. It could mean illness, storm, madness, or death. So their stories were told in fragments, hinted at in lullabies, marked in bone carvings, or in the direction of a drumbeat. The power of these gods lay in their mystery, in their refusal to be boxed into language. In cultures that prized oral tradition, erasing a name didn't mean erasing the god. It meant shielding yourself from what speaking it might cause. Today, scholars struggle to reconstruct these pantheons. But what remains are echoes of presence without identity, power without face, faith without name. And in the Arctic, that silence was sacred. No god disappears on its own. Someone buries it. When Christian missionaries arrived in the Arctic, they didn't just bring crosses and scripture. They brought fire, schools, and forgetting. And while Arctic faiths didn't have temples to burn, they had something more fragile: memory. Converts were taught to renounce spirits. Shamans were dismissed as madmen. Children were forbidden to speak the old names. Sacred songs became shameful. Drums were broken, and silence grew. The process wasn't always violent. Often it was quiet, a trade. Trade your stories for protection. Trade your gods for bread. Trade your soul for the promise of heaven somewhere warmer. But Arctic gods don't die easily. They remain in carvings half buried in snow, in lullabies whispered to children who forget them by morning, in the shapes of animals that still appear in dreams. Some elders still remember. Some rituals are still practiced in secret. And some names, though never spoken aloud, still freeze the air when thought. The church may have mapped a region, but it never fully conquered it. In the north, where darkness reigns half the year, the old gods still linger, watching, waiting, remembered only by those who know where not to look.